I have been working very hard for 16 years to build rock solid processes and an operational business. And I don't think I've really gotten to show it off yet.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer, ADP. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. We're so glad you're here with us today. At the time of this recording, we're looking at just a few days left of summer. My kiddos are getting back into the swing of things with school in session again. We've decided to homeschool 3 kids and send 1 to a private school this year. So reach out to me if you want to learn more about why that was the case. But again, just glad you're here with us today. And I've got another amazing guest with me today, Jered Sturm. Jered, welcome to the show.
No, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to sharing a bit about my story.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before we get started, I'd like to have my listening audience learn a little bit more about kind of what you're up to. Jered's the CEO of SNS Capital Group, which is a leading multifamily investment firm in Cincinnati, Ohio. He has over 18 years of experience in the industry. And get this, Jered transitioned from an apartment maintenance technician to a prominent multifamily owner-operator. He has built SNS Capital Group into a vertically integrated firm with over $150 million in assets. Jered, that's quite a track record there. I'm not sure how long it took you to kind of ramp up, your multifamily investment holdings, but I would certainly love to learn a little bit more about, what maybe kind of those trigger events were that you had to come to the conclusion that, it's maybe time to take a step out of apartment maintenance and move into being an owner operator in multifamily.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share that and kind of go back to the beginning. And fortunately for me, it started at a pretty young age. So I was an apartment maintenance technician while I was in high school. I was not a great academic student, but I was very good in wood shop. And our high school fortunately had a program where senior year you could sign up to work full time. So using my kind of natural aptitude in the trades and in wood shop, I was able to get a job as an apartment maintenance tech working for another local landlord here in the Cincinnati, Ohio market. So I didn't have a ton of experience, but I just had a natural aptitude to be able to fix things and a willingness and drive to say yes to whatever I was asked to do. And then that evolved into friends and family asking, can you fix this? Can you fix that? Which quickly changed into, can you renovate my bathroom? Can you renovate my kitchen? And again, just YouTube and learning along the way got me to where coming out of high school, 2008, myself and my brother bought our first rental property, which was a 6-bedroom house. We lived in 2 of the bedrooms, rented out the other 4. That was the start of our journey. But then since 2008, we were buying single family houses and small duplexes. And the first 8 years was all of our own capital, just buying something with distress, renovating, forcing appreciation, stripping the equity, and then redeploying into the next one. Now, 16 years down the road, we have 1,400 apartments here in Cincinnati and have sold off all of our smaller assets and focused exclusively on large apartment communities.
Oh, that's great. And when you say 1,400, I assume that you're referring to 1,400 doors that you currently have under management. Is that correct?
Correct. That's over 19 communities.
That's great. And your typical buy box is going to be, maybe something that was built in the 1980s, 1990s, maybe a property that, like you say, you have to force that appreciation through some sort of a renovation plan. Talk to us a little bit more about, when it comes to renovating, hundreds of apartment units, it takes a team, right? So is your team vertically integrated on the construction management side, on the property management side? What does that typically look like, and why did you make those decisions?
It is. So we are vertically integrated on both property management and construction management. And so coming from a trades background and building up a small construction company, that was one of our competitive advantages. Now it's taken 15, 16 years to polish those operations and get extremely good at doing it at scale. But what it means when I say vertically integrated for your listeners is that it's handled in-house by our W-2 employees rather than outsourcing it to another company or vendor. And so we built up our own property management company to support the operations of our assets. We don't do third-party management. And then we built up our construction arm of our company to handle the renovations. Now, it doesn't mean we don't vendor out some things like parking lots and roofs and that, but the majority of our interior apartment renovations, which would be like a $10,000 to $15,000 spend, is done under our process with our people. And so that leads us to a team of about 55 today. And so we've grown to have about 55 full-time employees, and that's been a fun process as well.
That's great. Now, I'd like my listening audience to know a little bit more about why the decision was made to go to a vertically integrated construction and property management type of a business versus the alternative would be using third-party construction management, using third-party, property management. What are kind of the main, key reasons why, you made that decision when you did?
Yeah, I think one of the turning points that maybe some of your listeners will run into, and I'll share my story, it was probably 2012, and we might have been at like 20 or 30 units that we owned at the time. And frankly, what we were really good at was the construction and renovation side. So myself and my brother said, let's focus on that. Let's hire a third-party property management company to oversee the day-to-day property management operations of our assets. And again, these are small assets at the time, only like 20 to 30 units. But the approach we took at that time when we made that decision was what we did was we found similar properties that were listed on Zillow or apartments.com, or I forget the listing sites. And we called them as if we were prospective residents rather than calling the corporate office to talk to the sales team about handing over our property management operations to them. And at those size units in our market during that time frame, the results were so bad, right? So they wouldn't answer the phone. Just if we did get a tour, it was just not professional. And so we made the decision at the time, like, well, we can't hand over our assets to these poor operations or they're going to run them into the ground. So let's go ahead and focus on building the systems and processes and building that property management company up underneath us. And we've done that for now many years just through the school of hard knocks and just learning from experience and trying to improve continuously. And, in my very biased opinion, I think we're the best owner operator in our market at this point because we're relentless about trying to find a better way of doing it. And so both construction management and property management have always been in-house the whole time.
No, that's great. And I don't know if people listening to this podcast episode know and understand that the margins in property management are really limited, right? So when you bring that in-house, right, there's a much greater alignment of interest at all levels, right? Whether it be having their own skin in the game to synergies, accountability, transparency. It's very difficult to fire a non-performing property management third-party company versus just letting go a bad apple employee, right, in-house. So I can definitely see how that's tremendously impactful. And I would presume probably in most, cases at a property level, the goal is really to have the property management company break even, right?
Yeah, property management is the least fun, least profitable, most important component of real estate investment because really it's the lever that forces the appreciation. And that's where we make the majority of our money is by forcing value into these assets. And so absolutely, we don't do that for anyone else, right? I have no interest in doing third-party management for others. We get calls all the time because we're good at it, but it's not profitable. So I don't want to do it for others, right? It's all about forcing appreciation and bringing those assets up to a new value.
Makes total sense. Now, I know that there's kind of a a couple of different types of investors out there, right? You've got the investors that are focused on cash flow, and you've got investors that are focused on, more the equity, upside, at the end when the opportunity goes full cycle. And then, of course, you've got some other investors, myself included, that really like to have, kind of a diversified approach, right? Investments that pay consistent, cash flow up front, have much lower of a risk premium maybe, and then other investments that there's more of a value add business plan, and thus those typically come with greater amounts of risk. But the trade off is there's a greater potential for equity upside when those opportunities go full cycle. So with your business, are you typically focused on those investments that maybe have kind of a trade-off of cash flow versus equity? What does that typically look like, and how do you typically encourage investors to act?
Yeah. I think you're highlighting something that's really important to us is aligning the synergy of our investors' investment philosophy with what we're chasing. So what we always say, our investment philosophy is consistent, predictable cash flow. However, the market has been very favorable and we're very good at forcing appreciation. So what we've become known for is the infinite return model, and being able to buy an asset. Typically we'll put a 10-year timeline on it. So we intend to hold this asset for 10 years. Historically, what we've been able to do is around year 2 or 3, we have repositioned this asset and made it significantly worth more, restructure the debt at that time. And because of our hard work plus a favorable market conditions, we've been able to return 100% or more of investor capital around that debt restructure, which then mathematically makes the returns infinite. We continue to hold the asset. The ownership stays the same, meaning the investors continue to own, and they get consistent, predictable quarterly distributions, but they have all their money out of the deal. And then we roll into the next one. So really, the business plan for us hasn't changed all that much over 16 years. It's just grown in size, right? It's buy distress, force appreciation, strip the equity, continue to hold, and roll into the next one. And so in my, again, biased opinion, it's the best of both worlds. If you can find the opportunities that produce that strategy, is you get the consistent, predictable cash flow. But if you have a group that can execute like ours, you also get the quicker churn of capital to then redeploy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, with that type of strategy, can you speak specifically about what type of debt structure you've seen to work the best with that type of a business plan?
Yeah. So I can only speak for our company. And because our underlying investment philosophy is consistent, predictable cash flow, we prioritize that over the ability to then strip that equity. So looking back over our current 19 communities, the majority of them are long-term 10-year fixed rate debt. And so in hindsight, over the last 2 years, that was a very good move. So we have rock solid operations plus long-term fixed rate debt, puts us in a very good position for long-term, consistent, predictable cash flow. But another thing that we were very fortunate to do, and this is a little bit into the weeds for the listeners, so let me know if we want to change directions, but from 2020 to 2022, we used exclusively swap loans. And so we we would take a floating rate loan, and at closing, we would immediately swap it for a fixed rate loan. But as interest rates go up, those loans actually become assets. And when we break them, I'm skipping some steps, but when we break them, there's almost a prepayment penalty in reverse. So there's a huge asset there. But to answer your question, we primarily are doing long-term fixed rate debt because it just aligns with our investment philosophy. But there's ways to have that kind of debt, and you might pay a slight premium while also then being able to put things like supplemental loans, or maybe you structure in a way that you have a more advantageous prepay penalty to try to wiggle out into a new loan once you force appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think that that'd be incredibly important to have that identified on the front end, especially in your underwriting model, because if the plan is to carry, something with longer term debt that's more fixed, but if you decide to sell that property, halfway into the business plan because it makes sense to do so, you're hit with yield maintenance and defeasance. Am I right?
If you have agency debt, yeah. One of the big things is going to be like You need to make sure your investors are on board for the full life cycle. And obviously, we're not going to nail it right on 10 years on the mark. But we're structuring our business model and our debt to be synergistic rather than say, here's the model and here's the debt and they don't work together. That's where people get in trouble.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, you've been in the industry for 18 years, so you've had the opportunity to go through a few different, market cycles. I think about, 2008, 2009, 2010, right, in the global financial crisis, as so it's called. Obviously, we had, the COVID era, and then we had, a couple of years of aggressive increases in the Federal Reserve overnight rate in order to hopefully tame inflation. So all three of those events have had, a major impact, in the world of investing, specifically in commercial real estate. So I'd like to maybe learn a little bit more about, maybe one or two of the biggest challenges you've faced in the last 18 years and how you overcame them.
Yeah, I'm one that's adamant about learning from other people's wisdom. And I would say I haven't been in the industry long enough. I was a maintenance tech for 2 years and then bought my first property in 2008. So it's very different. Well, I don't even know, but based on what I'm told, it's very different to be, struggling through a recession and then have the fortitude to continue to buy. Where I walked in at probably the best time any of us will ever see to start buying, and that was just happenstance and luck of when I turned 18, right? But I think that's very different for the guys who were, bleeding, struggling, and they had the fortitude to say, no, I'm going to continue to buy and continue to double down, as opposed to me, like I didn't have all of that overhead and those challenges. It was just like I got to benefit from all the good things through the financial recession or the Great Recession, right? So the 2008, 9, 10, 11, I shouldn't get too much credit for that because I guess I did have the ability to say, I'll throw everything I have at it, which was hard because everyone was saying real estate's a bad move. But then in COVID era, honestly, was made things easier. But we did just fine in the Midwest, and it wasn't challenging. And obviously, inflation helps with assets that you own. And then recently, with the Fed's increasing interest rates at a historical pace, we were okay there because a lot of the debt structure we had. So, the thing I would say, it's been very easy, right? Like I think I have been working very hard for 16 years to build rock solid processes and an operational business. And I don't think I've really gotten to show it off yet. So I don't know when the next recessionary environment will be that is like deep enough for me to actually show it off. But there's a lot of groups who have been buying and haven't put in the time and effort to build the foundation that we have. And I think one day we'll get to see that realized. I'm looking forward to it, to be honest, because we put a lot of work into it. And I think it will only show in the hardest of times.
Yeah, that's right. And you mentioned best in class operators. And I want my listening audience to know and understand this, that when it comes to investing in real estate, there are better times and worse times to get into and invest more into real estate. However, with that said, there are also opportunities at all stages of the economic cycle to get in. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of diversification, of sponsor, of geographic location, of asset class, of the time that you choose to invest. Your financial advisor is going to suggest diversification when it comes to Wall Street and investing, right? They're going to encourage you, to drip dollars into the market over time for dollar cost averaging purposes. But you can do the same thing, when it comes to investing in real estate. But the important thing is it all comes down to the sponsor. And there is a huge difference between a best-in-class sponsor and a not best-in-class sponsor. So, Jered, I'm giving you your opportunity to give us the pitch. Why is it that you would call your business, SNS Capital Group, why would you refer to yourself as a best-in-class sponsor operator?
Yeah, I would rephrase it and say, like, the investors who are listening, if they're on the phone and asking this question to any sponsor, rather than say, why are you best in class? The simple question that you need to ask are, what are your KPIs? right? So like if you're a best in class operator, you have specific KPIs that tell you if you are or are not doing well, and they should tie right back into the operations of the business. And so obviously every single role in our company has 2 to 3 KPIs that we hold those individual roles accountable to. They all then flow into the financial returns. And so I can give you a few specific examples that would help, the listeners understand, but to say you're a best in class operator, one very common KPI that property management companies track is vacancy, right? But I think if you just said vacancy, that tells me that you're not a best in class operator, because what we do is we break vacancy down into the components of the individuals who can control those components of vacancy. So for us, going back to the fact that we have property management and construction in house, vacancy is the time from one resident moving out to the next resident moving in, but there's different things happening and different people to be held accountable through that process. And so in our company, you have from the time the resident moves out to the time the construction starts. That's our project managers. The time the construction starts to the time the construction finishes, which is our turnover teams. And then the last component, which is the construction's finished to the when the next resident moves in, that's our leasing team, right? So we average to do these $10,000 to $15,000 renovations 2.5 days. From the time the construction is done to the time the next person moves in, we average 2 days, right? And so like we can have 1,400 units. 5 of these communities are stabilizing, meaning we're repositioning and doing these heavy renovations. And yet, as of today, our economic occupancy is 99%. And it's like, so to balance all of those moving parts means you're a good operator. But I think a better question that a lot of investors don't ask is like, tell me some of the KPIs that you're tracking, or you could even say, tell me some of the KPIs you're very successful with. Which KPIs are you struggling with right now? And can you screenshot me your, historical trailing 12 on those KPIs?
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate you highlighting some of those specific KPIs, and one other one, at least as it relates to occupancy, that unfortunately not a lot of investors hone in on, is there's a difference between physical occupancy and economic occupancy, right? So just because you're saying that your occupancy is at 92% does not mean that's economic occupancy, because there might be some concessions built in there as well, in order to lease up so to speak, that asset. So obviously there's some very important questions to be asking. I would like to get a little bit personal with you, Jered, if you don't mind, and that is, I know you have a young family, so how do you balance being a best in class operator with having a couple of kiddos and a wife, and all the different various activities that you've got going on in your day to day?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think everyone's trying to learn their fit to it. And so I think of it of like you have different buckets in life, right? I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a business owner, and then I also have to take care of myself too, right? Like health and wellness is a big hobby of mine, and so on all of these buckets, a lot of times what happens is like they'll get out of whack, and you just got to rebalance them, and you're constantly trying to do that. And so there's some weeks where work just needs my attention and I work a lot. And then there's other weeks where it's like I've been on a family vacation, and work is the thing that gets put on the back burner, and it's a constant rebalancing. I guess what I would say is one thing I'm really proud of is the intentionality and awareness of like those separate buckets and making sure that none of them run empty, right? So I'd be the first to say I don't always get it right, and there's times where some run low, but I'm quick to react to it and make it right. And um, what I am proud of is like I'm focused on every day being a better version of myself in each of those buckets. And some days I take step back, but the net result is I'm moving forward and progressing, which I'm happy with.
Yeah, I really appreciate you highlighting that, and the fact that your life is kind of broken out into various different categories, boxes, etc. And it's a constant rebalancing. You use that word rebalancing, and I so appreciate that, because it's absolutely right. There's just going to be different seasons in life. There's going to be different seasons in a month, within a week, within a day, right? And it's this kind of continual, rebalancing, and really surrounding yourself with others in your life that can hold you accountable, to those rebalancing efforts, because it is hard sometimes. We don't always get it perfect. And sometimes we need a little tap on the shoulder, from a friend or a trusted colleague to say, hey, you're spending too much time in that bucket. I think you should take some time and reallocate, your time, effort, and energy to other areas of your life. So really appreciate you calling that out. Well, the next question I have for you, Jered, is what's next for Jered, either personally, professionally, as we look to end, 2024 and move into a new year.
Yeah, as I said before, the thing that motivates me the most is just becoming a better version of myself. And so in each of those buckets, I'll have specific goals or ways I want to progress. From a business standpoint, something I think that is unique to me is there's a lot of firms of our size that will say we'll grow by this many units or this much revenue or, this many assets under management. I don't typically like to direct our company in that way. Instead, I try to focus on the process of how we grow. So, how many broker phone calls did we make? How many deals did we underwrite? And how many personal meetings did we go to direct to owners? And so we have these certain metrics that we track. And if we do all of those things and we don't buy a single deal, I'm completely content with it, because I'm very fortunate that when we started in 2008, 9, 10, and the success that we've had, that supports my personal life exactly how I want it to, and it supports our business's overhead. And so there's no reason for me to force deals to happen just to go from 1,400 units to 2,400 units just for the sake of growth. But I do enjoy progressing, so I try to make sure we're tracking the actions that will progress us. Success is, did we take those actions?
Jered, I've really appreciated the time that you've spent with us today, and thank you for providing tremendous value to our listening audience. What would maybe be one or two different ways that our audience can connect with you to learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. And the best way would be through our website. So it's snscapitalgroup.com, and I'm sure the spelling will be in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll absolutely provide the links that you've given to us in the show notes. Again, Jered, really appreciate your time with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me a platform to share a little bit, and I hope the audience took something away.
Absolutely. And I know I did. So thank you, listening audience, and thank you for joining another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.